Okay. Well, we have our own, we have our own photographer as well. You're aware?
They're still here?
Oh, of course. Okay. No, it's don't worry about that. Right. I'm going to go shout. I'm not going to be British. I'm going to go shout. One sec.
Use your French personality. Israeli personality. What? Good. They're digital. You can take 100 of them and delete 99. Good. That's fine. Yep. Okay. You know, do one sideways too, so you get more of the sign in. 3, 2, 1, go. Quick, he's going to take his podium back. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, well, let's just go. Okay, Alex is coming back up. We're done. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we can take our seats, please. I'd be very grateful if the microphone people could pump up the volume a little bit. Thank you. That's much better. Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm insisting we sit down, and I'll tell you why. Because we need to be out of this room in an hour and a half, or else the dinner will be extremely late, and we can't allow that to happen. So if everyone can take their seats, I'd be extremely grateful. And it's with talking of extreme gratefulness, we have with us a hero of mine, and he has been for a few years. And I'm sure many of you are already familiar with this particular gentleman, Professor Gerald Steinberg. If camera in the UK are holding the media to account, Professor Steinberg and his organization, NGO Monitor, are actively holding governments to account for effectively supporting anti-Zionism via the back door by supporting a number of NGOs who are openly critical and, in many cases, hostile, and in the worst excesses, actually call for the destruction or even wholesale murder of Jewish people. Without further ado, it's my great pleasure. Please give a warm round of applause to Professor Gerald Steinberg. Thank you.
Something on here? You just click something? What do I click here?
You're good to go.
I'm not clicking anything here, but...
You'll see is just setting it up for you.
Alex, thanks for those very warm words, and thanks for all of you who are still here. I won't even tell you how many hours we've been sitting here, being depressed by how bad the situation is, but also seeing some amazing people. And I really want to thank Alex, EJA, the entire EJA team for all the work that went into not just producing this conference, which is amazing, but also for all the work that they've done over the years, many events in Brussels that we have been fighting the good battle, and in some cases succeeding. I want to start by asking you, all those people who are still in the room and awake, how many of you are citizens of countries that are members of the European Union, or Switzerland, or Norway? It's just about everybody, right? Or the UK as well. Your tax money is paying for some of the worst examples of anti-Semitism, particularly on social media, as Tomer discussed earlier today. Organizations that go under the headings of human rights, of development, economic development, humanitarian aid, civil society, are among the leaders of producing hate of all the various, across the range. Classical anti-Semitism, theological anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism, it's all there. And in many ways, these are the most effective in the sense of influencing the most people, because they're put out by organizations that are considered to be highly respected. That's the language we see in The Guardian and the media, Le Monde, and all these other places. When these organizations say Israel's an apartheid state, well, that must be right. When they say that the Jews are controlling the media, well, that's part of the problem. These are classical examples of anti-Semitism that, as we have discovered, exposed for the last 21, 22 years, since the infamous Durban conference, and particularly NGO Forum on the elimination of racism, which became itself a breeding ground for anti-Semitism, and which led to the need, as Andrew Baker said earlier, the understanding there needs to be a working definition of anti-Semitism, not only because each country had its own, if they had any kind of definition or criteria, but because what they saw at Durban was this outpouring of hate, including distribution of the protocols of elders of Zion, all these combinations, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, theological anti-Semitism, Christian theological anti-Semitism, Muslim theological anti-Semitism, all in the format of support for civil society under the designation of human rights and under the auspices of the United Nations. And so the organization that I founded at that time, as a result, direct result of these events, NGO Monitor now has a index, a database of over 250 organizations. The vast majority are funded by European governments under the headings of civil society and support for human rights. And I encourage you to go. I'll just put some examples just to show you, just a few of, there are hundreds of examples I could bring, that are, again, funded, supported, enabled by European governments. If the European governments were serious about stopping any kind of funding for anti-Semitism, regardless of the excuse, whether it's called human rights or civil society, or whether the Europeans, and you ask the European officials, as I do all the time, why are you funding this? And they say, first, I wasn't aware of this, I'll have to go check. And then if they have a serious discussion, then the European officials say, well, we fund these organizations, but they're free to set their own agenda. They have free speech, which is nonsense. If you're funding somebody, if you're funding an organization that supports the mafia, and you become aware of that, you're not going to continue that funding under the heading of supporting free speech. But that's the excuse that's given. Or government official after government official, they all have the same party line, they all say the same things. This is an example, just two examples of a Palestinian organization called Badil. These are their posters they put out, and you can see here very clearly the mix of what's called the new anti-Semitism, the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, collective anti-Semitism, with the motifs, the themes that are there in the classical anti-Semitism. It doesn't take even an IRA definition to be able to see that these are clearly anti-Semitic. And again, these are not, I'm not cherry picking, there are hundreds or thousands of these examples. What distinguishes these is the fact that this is funded by European governments. And in fact, for a brief period of time, I believe it was that the Dutch government, when they saw that their money was going to it, they led to a change in the leadership, but not the funding kept going. And the new leaders are no different than the old leaders who are promoting this. Here's another case. You can see the images on the side. This is a event that was held in Palestinian territory. I believe that's in Ramallah. And the people who are looking at these posters and pictures and images that were given prizes there are European government officials. We identified from the pictures we have are higher quality, who are the European officials also who tweeted and Facebook post about how they were there to support the Palestinian narrative, the right of the Palestinians. They called it support for a two-state solution or images like that. But it is the same exact themes that we saw there, again endorsed by European officials. More examples of these, a different group of NGOs funded by European governments. We have a collection of images that were posted by human rights organizations supported by European governments, that the same theme that we heard that linked Jews, Israel, COVID, vaccines, all those images together, as these are all the classic themes of anti-Semitism. Terms like Jewish superiority is often expressed by the NGOs. The European governments every year together collectively provide at least 175 million euros. That's the money that we have tracked that go to around approximately 150 NGOs year after year after year. Some of them are Palestinian groups. The close ones that get the largest amount of money are usually Palestinian groups, Israeli groups in that fringe of the political spectrum under the heading of human rights, all with exactly the same language. Sometimes the images are somewhat less visible if they're Israeli groups because they're maybe more sensitive to the allegations to being seen as being anti-Semitic, and very often European groups, including European groups that are based in church organizations. There are a number of Germans here, so if you're aware of the activities of the Catholic charity, and I probably mispronounce it, Missorel, or Brot für die Welt, which is the Protestant charity, and what unites these two is A, they are funded by the German government, and B, they are very much involved in the type of agendas and themes that portray Israel as the world's greatest human rights violator. These are German church groups. And I'm just giving you a series of examples. And of course, these kinds of themes, the images, the demonization, whether it's of Israel or of Jews, directly feeds into violent anti-Semitic attacks. And it comes over and over and over again. The images that compare Israel to the Nazis is another theme that comes up quite frequently in these, again, human rights, civil society, NGOs funded by European governments. The biggest sources of this funding are generally, this is again year after year, based on the information that's available, not all of it is available, are the European Union itself. Very often what you'll see is that Sweden and Belgium and Germany and other European countries will provide 700,000 euros or 1 million euros to an organization, and the European Union will provide exactly a similar amount to exactly the same list of organizations. It changes slightly every year, but not significantly. So each of the countries more or less follows the same pattern. From Finland, and the North Finland is a relatively small funder, but then Norway and Sweden, Denmark, Sweden now has changed in government. They said they're going to cut back in the money, but for the last 20 years, at least 10 million euros are the equivalent every year to these kinds of organizations without any checks and balances. Germany is one of the worst, which is, one would say, surprising, right? And yet, Germany provides at least 10, perhaps significantly more, to these organizations. Germany is one of the worst because there's no transparency. If you go to the Norwegian government website, you see a list of worldwide the NGOs that they fund. So you at least know, and there's accountability, members of parliament can ask questions in a number of European countries. In Germany, there is no transparency, and this is the work that NGO Monitor did. We found at least 34 different branches of the German government, all connected to other agencies. And so when you ask the German foreign minister or member or the German ambassador, why are you giving money to an organization called Al-Haq, the leading Palestinian organization accusing Israel of war crimes, and of course of its Jewish supporters of controlling the media and other elements of anti-Semitism? The German ambassador will say, I have no information. And it's true. I think that is credible, because the German foreign minister does not have that information of where money goes. It goes to a sub-agency, to a sub-bureau, to a program, and then when you ask the bureau why their symbol is on the back of the literature and the publications and on the website of Al-Haq as being supported by the German government, they'll say, well, it's a loose consulting relationship and we don't interfere with their activities. Well, what does that mean? It means they take no responsibility. So here you have the German government funding many of these organizations, producing some of the crudest anti-Semitism, and having zero accountability or transparency. I don't have time to go into the reasons of why the human rights and civil society networks became so virulently anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. It goes back to the days of the Soviet Union. It goes back to communist anti-Semitic themes and campaigns in the 1960s in the United Nations in response to the Soviet Union being accused of anti-Semitism. They said, well, Zionism is racism. And that became a major theme, and that continues throughout, even though without questioning it. Of course, we had the 1975 Zionism is Racism UN resolution, the infamous one that we had President Herzog ripping off on the podium of the United Nations. But the UN bodies that continue to promote that, and the NGOs that are behind the UN bodies, have not changed at all since that time. So all of this goes together. What do we do about this? And that's the final point that I want to make. In each of these countries, it's important, and it's happening more and more, that public officials, in all sorts of different ways, question and ask, why is it that our tax money is going to this? We see in many of these countries now members of parliament asking the questions. In the Netherlands, we recently had a case where they admitted that a significant tens of millions of euros from the Netherlands government went to a Palestinian development organization that had 34 officials were connected to the PFLP terrorist organization. And they stopped the funding because no government can accept and acknowledge that their money is going to such unacceptable activities, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's connected to terrorism, under the headline of support for civil society or for economic development. So providing that information, and that's what NGO Monitor is out there to do. We would look forward to working with you. We've been working with Alex, we've been working with the EJA for many years, many sessions in Brussels, the European Parliament, and elsewhere. And even within the difficult environment of the European Parliament and the European Commission, Katharina von Schneerbein, who was on the schedule, is very familiar with the work that we do and has often provided that information to the European Commission. So that's extremely important. And then the last point, which I want to make to reinforce what many of you have said up here on the podium, education. Understanding, using the IHRA working definition. This is anti-Semitic. This is anti-Semitic. You're signed on to this working definition. Why are you funding it? And the European Parliament recently, I think the last week, adopted what's called the budgetary discharge resolution, which includes very specific terms and requirements that any NGO funded by the European Union not engage in racist and discriminatory behavior, including anti-Semitism. It's going to take a few steps to go from the European Parliament to the European Commission to enforce that, but it's an important acknowledgement. So education, lobbying, all of that does have a growing positive effect. Thank you. And by the way, I have some examples which I'll put in the hotel, in the lobby when you come in, and there's some copies of these in a hard copy you're welcome to take with you.
Thank you so much, Professor. And they might be small steps, but the fact is it's people like you, it's people like Marcus Sheff, also at Impact SC, who are keeping up the pressure to the EU institutions. Why? Because they can't ignore you. And because you show incontrovertible evidence, it's extremely, extremely important. Thank you so much for what you do. And there's a reason why you're in Brussels so often, and you're asked to come to Brussels so often, Professor, because what you do is making a difference. And it might be a slow drip, but it's the nature of a huge, unwieldy institution, like the European institutions, that like a rather large cruise ship, it takes a long time to turn. But once it starts turning, I believe the momentum will be unstoppable. So keep at it, good sir. Thank you very much. Fantastic. And it's great to see. We're going to go a bit closer now. We're going to go back to Portugal. Two very, very important parliamentarians, Mr. João Rebelo and Mr. Alexandre Porto. Thank you so much. I'm not great with Portuguese names. Almost as bad as my Polish. In Portugal, sorry, I beg your pardon. So please come and join me, and we'll have a brief discussion. Thank you. Nice to see you again. How are you? Please grab a seat. I'll go in the middle. Okay. I'll stay on the left. Perfect. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, obviously we're in Portugal, and we have with us two parliamentarians who've made the schlep all the way up from Lisbon to be with us this afternoon. Thank you very much. One of the gentlemen to my left was with us in Terezin in the Czech Republic. I'm going to start off with a very, very soft question. First of all, to the Alpi president, Mr. Revelo. Why Israel? And what is it about Israel that speaks to you as something that you wanted to get involved in?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. As I was a member of parliament, right now currently I'm not a member of parliament, but I was a member of parliament during 20 years, and I was chairman of the Friendship Association with the Knesset during those 20 years. Why Israel? I remember clearly, the influence was, I'm not Jew and my family are Catholic, but my mother was very influential in my life in a lot of things, and one of them was Israel. When I was young, 12, 30 years, I was always asking questions about the world, what is happening, because I was very interested in history and international affairs. And one day I was looking to what was happening in the South Lebanon in the beginning of the 80s, 82, 83, and I started to ask questions to my mother. And at the end, she said, you know, for us Portuguese, and I was living in Belgium at that time, studying in Belgium because my father was working there, she said, for us Portuguese, for us Catholic Portuguese, it's a duty to be friend and to defend Israel. And I asked her why, and she said, because our ancestors with the Inquisition did terrible things to the Portuguese Jews. They expelled them, they imposed them to become Christian, and a lot of them were killed during the Inquisition. So it's our duty to try to clean what we did in the past. Maybe even my ancestors did those things. And then I started to pay attention to Israel. Then when I went to the university, I created a group of people defending Israel. It was Portuguese Zionists, students working on that. And that's when I start to see how bad information among my colleagues at university about Israel and the problem with Palestine was there. And since then, I work a lot of time with that. So answering your question, it was mostly by influenced by my mother and the interest that since then I have with Israel.
So as president of the Portugal-Israel Parliamentary Friendship Group, what was it about Israel, of all the multitude of political topics that you could have got yourself engaged in? Why Israel?
Let me just start to thank to EGA for this invitation. It is a pleasure to be here as a member of parliament. Well, I would say I do not have the same experience as João, because in the 80s I was not even born. But since I started to read, I've got one of my interests is to read about Middle East and to read about Israel and started to develop an interest and also a taste of friendship with Israel and with the Israeli cause. So when I entered in Parliament in 2019, we had to pick up the friendship groups. And it is a funny story because I've asked in 2019 when I was first elected to the Parliament, so that I would want to be a member of the friendship group. And then my party appointed me to the Iran-Portugal friendship group. And then I said, well, I prefer not to be in anyone, but definitely I don't want, as my preference is to go to the Israel, I would not go to the Iran friendship group. And then in the end, my party switched, and then I joined the Israeli group. So I appreciate the Jewish culture, and also I appreciate the fight and the strength of the Israeli culture and people who only fight to exist and only fight to reclaim their presence in the land of Israel. So we have some challenges. I don't know if you want me to speak about I would stress 5 major challenges and
Yeah,
that.
please do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I
please
go?
do. Please do. We'll come back to
Okay,
Mr.
then
Rebello afterwards.
to Mr. Rebello. Okay, so now the current friendship group of Portugal, Israel, has five major, I would say, key points in our activity. The first of all is perhaps one of the most difficult. It is to reshape the way that our media and that the public opinion here in Portugal speaks about Israel. For example, in the last days, we have been some attacks in the south of Israel, and when you watch the news, it seems that only one side is attacking the other way. So generally, and João is a bit older than me, can confirm that. Generally, on the Portuguese media, we will see Israel being not well treated and with bad coverage, with bad press. So that's one of our key points to make a better public opinion to our Israeli friends. The second one is in the political establishment in Portugal, there is also some, I would say, not a total anti-Semitic opinion about Israel, but we have work to do. And the way that I think, and the members of the group, we are 15 members of parliament that are members of this group, understood this task is to kind of do regular activity, so that in the Portuguese parliament you will see a constant activity of the friendship group, so that the MPs, the journalists and the politicians get used to see good activities, a dynamic group with some initiatives about Israel and also about the relationship between the Portuguese and the Israeli. The third point is to work on the political opinions of the Portuguese parliament. We have established this group in November, and since then we put up 2 votes in Parliament. The first one was in March to remember the victims of Inquisition, International Day for the Victims of the Inquisition. It was approved with only 6 MPs abstaining. And then on the last week, and tomorrow will be discussed on the Foreign Affairs Committee, we put up a vote for the 75 years of Israel. So with these votes, we try to, not just to say that we are alive and active, but so that we can also kind of framing Israel with some key points: the respect of Jewish life, the respect of the people that want to be in their land, and also to foster the relationship between Portugal and Israel, and of course, then I will pass to the fourth point, a major one, to change the position of our country in the multilateral organizations that we are part of. In the last years, Portugal, in my opinion, have had some very sad votings when it regards to Israel and to the issues about Palestine. So I like to see my country with the Portuguese.
Hello.
Okay. So this fourth point is that because I like to see my country when it comes to the multilateral forums, like the UN, for example. When it comes to votes, I like to see Portugal voting with our European allies, with our NATO allies, with our friends. I don't like to see my country to vote aside with some of the worst dictatorships on earth. And usually, when the discussion goes to Israel and to the issues between Israel and the Palestine, and we also respect the will and the self-determination of the Palestinian people, but we see that sometimes the votings about Palestine are much more to offend or to attack Israel. And unfortunately, my country, and that's a work that the parliament is doing. We can pressure the government. We did that 3 weeks ago when, for example, in the Portuguese website for foreign affairs, we had an advice to the Portuguese people not to travel to Israel because of the demonstrations in Tel Aviv. And we've started to work also with Mr. João Rebelo Association, so that we speak out loud in the social networks that why the Portuguese authorities would disencourage people, Portuguese people, to travel to Tel Aviv because of the normal and pacific demonstrations of people, but would not do the same as people wanting to go to Paris and visit France. And in 2 hours, we were able, with our pressure, to change what the Foreign Affairs website was putting about Israel. But that's an issue. And I would like to see when this term ends and when I finish my job as current chairman, that the Portuguese diplomacy starts, well, at least not to vote in favor of some recommendation and some texts that, in my opinion, much more than being pro-Palestine, are sometimes anti-Israel, and that's a huge challenge that we have to address. We are working quite aligned also with the Israeli embassy in Lisbon, and that's a major issue of our work. The final point is so that Portugal implement the definition of anti-Semitism of IRA in the Portuguese legislation. So we have to put in our laws that kind of anti-Semitism, because time to time, we see some acts of anti-Semitism in Portugal. So if I have to sum up the current activity of the Portuguese-Israel Parliamentarian Friendship Group, I would stress these 5 key points. And as I overpassed a little bit my time, I will pass to Mr.
No, it's absolutely fine, and I'll go to Mr. Rebelo on a couple of 2 points. So we have a bit of equality on the timing. But point number 1: has the Abraham Accords been a game changer for you, and generally in politics in Portugal? How was it received? And secondly, what do you think is to be gained for Portugal in a good, solid relationship with the State of Israel? I'm not just talking about security, but I mean, I don't know, perhaps technology, the tech sector. I'm thinking environment. I'm thinking water. What are the kinds of issues which get you excited about the Portugal-Israel relationship?
Okay, thank you. First of all, the accord, or the Abraham Accord that happened, had the support of Portugal as a country. And of course, we, as ALPI, as an association, we want very much that Israel break new deals with a lot of countries from the Middle East, because it starts to isolate the extremists and allows Israel, of course, to multiply their partner in the region, which is very important for Israel. So officially, Portugal supported it and even say very good things about it. Like Alexandre said, Portugal, which is said on the international forum, a lot of times who is silent or tend to votes against Israel. But that's a problem that we have in the last 30 years. Secondly, about Israel, the last 15 years, we have a huge increase on the business between the 2 countries. And with new areas, it's not only defense, it's started to be another other parts of business. One of them is what you say, water. We have grave problems of waters in Portugal. We have, mostly in the south and the Algarves. And the work that Israelis do by two things: desalinizations of the water that allows to have more water to the agriculture, and the reuse of the water that is conducted. The main way that Israel uses in agriculture is also very important for us. So yes, the relations is growing a lot on a lot of issues, which, by the way, at the end of the day, will allow our work as a friendship association with Israel to improve our work. But I think you also, when we came here, I saw some of your discussion, which is what Alexander and us and I are doing most recently. It's anti-Zionism. Because when we want to defend business with Israel, relations with Israel, cultural relations with Israel, sometimes we are facing what is the new face of anti-Semitism. And thank God, and I'm using this word, finally the EU is understanding that the new face of anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. It's the same word with the new faces, it's the same objective with the new strategy, it's the same hatred with a new target. It was the Jews in Europe, now it's Israel. But at the end of the day, it's exactly the same project. It's to attack the Jews in Europe. So the last speech that last year, finally, the chairman of the president of the European Community said, and I will wrote some of the words because it's very important, because our task, we have to follow what she asked for Europeans to do. She said, anti-Semitic hatred has no, I'm quoting, has no place in our world, and it makes no difference, that's very important, if it is disguised as anti-Zionism or whether it comes from fanatics of the far left or the far right. Finally, they are talking about the extremists of far left that are attacking the Jews, or from Islamists or other religious fundamentalists. We cannot and will not stay indifferent into the face of the increasing anti-Semitism. Not this time, not ever again. End of the quote. So, what we are debating right now, because the EU decided to have a plan on that, they are putting money, a lot of millions of euros for the states to be used, it's to have that comprehensive strategy combating anti-Semitism and fostering journalist life. So that action plan have money, and all the countries in Europe have to have the same plan within their national plans. So I think that one of the responsible of the Portuguese will be here tomorrow, I think, or today, I don't know when he'll arrive. So ask the questions, what is start to doing to implement what the President of the EU Commission is defending, because it's very important to people to understand that. I'm more optimist about the Portuguese population than maybe Alexandre. There are not much anti-Semitism in Portugal, thank God. Don't understand well my words when I say because we have small Muslim population, okay? Don't understand that I'm criticizing the Muslim, because Portugal don't have much Muslim population in Lisboa or Porto, the big cities. So that anti-Semitism that is mainly projected by Muslim radicals don't happen in Portugal. I see a survey in Europe that most of the Jews in Europe say that 35% of the attacks that believe come from Muslims. And then it was the far left, and then it was from the far right, and then finally from enemies of Israel. But we don't have that problem here. Yes, the press is a problem, not because they are engaged against Israel, because they don't have much information. It's our goal and our task, and Alexander is doing a wonderful job in the parliament helping on that. It's our task, Friends of Israel, to give them, provide them with information that can allow them to make good press. And we are doing that in Alpi. Why? Working with the journalists. When I saw some appalling things wrote on the newspaper, I'll call the journalist, try to explain why it's wrong, and I try to give them good data on that, but also we try to prospect before it happens. So we work with journalists on formation to try, before it happens, preemptively, try to work with them on how they can approach and tackle the issues about Israel. And we don't want to interfere with their work or even to try, to tell them what to do, but they need to have much more information when they are discussed. Finally, education, I'm finished with that. That's the project that the Parliament have with the Ministry of Education. We work with all the schools on the explanation of what the Shoah was. And we ask all the schools to, and it's mandatory, and they are doing that, to explain what happens during the Third Reich, and since 33 till 45, what happens with the extermination of the Jews during the Third Reich. And that's important because at the end of the year, they have to present a work on what was and what happened. And that is always important, always to remember what happens for not to repeat the problem. Sorry to be so.
There's a couple of questions from the floor, and then time is marching on. So I'm going to take 2 questions, and let's keep them as brief as possible. If it's okay, sir, I know you had your hand up first, but we'll go ladies first to the lady at the back. Of course, madam.
So it's not really a question, it's just a very, very, very big thank you. My name is Ruth, and I'm a former member of Knesset in Israel, and I've met 1 or 2 friendship associations in my life, and I want to tell you that what I just heard from the both of you is completely unbelievable, outstanding, a complete plan, totally serious, of 2 people that don't have to, perhaps some people don't know that friendship associations are voluntary. It's not something that you get extra hours for. You don't have to do it. Your party doesn't pat you on the back for doing that, I'm sure. And it's something that you do, and you can see that from your words, from the bottom of your heart. And I'm really touched. I just wanted to say thank you.
Sir, I'm wondering how you can possibly top that. Please.
I have a report from the European Council for Israel. How they vote different countries like members of the European Union for support of Israel. And unfortunately, the 4 countries, the numbers of the support is the less. First is Ireland, is 14%. Second is Cyprus, 24%. Third is Spain, it's 26%. Portugal, 31%. And also, I want to think about some stereotypes about Poland, because many people think Poland is so interesting. Poland is 61% pro-Israel, like I told us, it's number 1, which support. This is, I'm happy to hear this, but it's a lot to do because unfortunately, you're right, there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of, we saw these clips from the journalists, and this coming actually mostly from the left side of the society.
Very much so. I think this was that was an important intervention as well. I'm very, very conscious, ladies and gentlemen. Time is running up against us, but really, as Ruth Wasserman-Lande just said, please, it's not every day we meet such dedicated volunteers who speak well of Israel. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And that concludes this panel. Thank you so much. Really great to see you again, by the way. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to move swiftly on. After this next presentation, my colleague Michel Gourari, who's the European Director for European March of a Living, will be taking over the final session before handing over to our Managing Director, Yorgos Papadakis. But I want to introduce you to another EGA project, which 2 of my esteemed colleagues have been working on very, very hard. And this is ending the trade of Nazi memorabilia. Some of you may have seen the coverage which we received as the European Jewish Association regarding items such as Hitler's watch, Wehrmacht toilet paper, Eva Braun dog's collar, Hermann Goering's ashtrays, sort of trinkets and memorabilia which is being sold on the open market. My colleagues have worked very hard at this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, the EGA Head of Legal Affairs, Mr. Shlomo Dayan, and APA EU Affairs Advisor Neshka Figel, who are going to talk you through the presentation. Thank you.
David and Gabriel, for the excellent hospitality and the amazing work they do here in Porto. Dear friends, Dear friends, for a long time, we in the organization have set ourselves the goal of fighting as much as possible the illegal phenomenon of uncontrolled trade in Nazi objects. This is a difficult struggle that requires from us a lot of work, both in the political and the legal field. We have worked on both in recent years to promote laws against trade in Nazi items in countries where there is no specific law against such a trade, and at the same time to promote legislative changes to close a loophole in law that already exists in several countries. Let me be clear. Our goal is not to completely prevent such a trading, but to make sure that such trading is carried out under the supervision of the law, to verify who is the seller and who is the buyer, and for what purpose. To make sure that such item will be sold only for the purpose of research and Holocaust studies and for no other purpose. This is our goal. To get into more details about things, I pass the stage to my colleague Neshka, who has been working with me on this project with a great dedication for a long time. Before I finish, I want to thank each and every one of you, community leader. It's not like you are the future of Europe. Together we will continue to do amazing things together. Neshka, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shlomo. My name is Neshka Figel. I've been working for the European Jewish Association as an EU Affairs Advisor. First of all, thank you, Porto, for giving us this opportunity to be here and have the delegation. So as my colleague Shlomi said, we have been working in the last months on the legislation of Nazi memorabilia in different European countries. And we have made also this topic one of our priorities for the 2023 and for the future, because we think that dealing with this is really important, and especially with items such as Nazi objects, referring to one of the bloodiest, darkest moments of humankind, is really important, and having a strong regulation, legislation is crucial. So I will start with our presentation. So, first of all, I would like just to say that we decided to show you the items with all the Nazi symbols, as you can say, and you can see, and not for the purpose of making you feel uncomfortable, but for the purpose of showing you and educating what is actually being sold, especially on auction houses, online auction houses, and for very, very expensive prices. So the sale of Nazi memorabilia represents a large, growing and international market, including the black market, boosted by several auction houses. And they claim that the majority of the clients are museums and education institutions, but not only. We also have private anonymous buyers. and it attracts international, often anonymous buyers with a strong purchasing power. So we have here the watch of Adolf Hitler, which has been sold for very expensive money in the last years at the online auction house, and other items. And the legislation over their sale is different from country to country. We can say in Germany, Austria, France, Hungary, the public display and dissemination of Nazi items is forbidden by law. And I would like to remind you that this initiative we have taken as the priority has already been addressed in the past. So there have been already letters sent by the EGA to stop some sales announced by auction houses. And we can see here already two representations of us saying no to sale of Nazi memorabilia. And more specifically, in Germany, the sale of such items is only permitted provided that the purchasers are buying according to the subsection 4 of the section 86 in the criminal code. So the dissemination of propaganda material of unconstitutional terrorist organization. So this prohibition, as I said, of public display and dissemination do not apply to promote the arts or science, research or teaching, reporting about current or historical events or similar purposes. This is why we decided to show you these items, because we want to raise awareness and to explain and to educate what they are. And in France, so the possession and sale of Nazi objects is permitted and legal, provided that they are not shown publicly, according to the Article R6451 of the Penal Code. It is punished the act of wearing or displaying in public a uniform, insignia, or emblem recalling the members of an organization declared criminal, as the Nazi organization is. And the exhibition of objects is prohibited except for the needs of a film, a show, or an exhibition, including a historical evocation. So France, it has to be said, is one of the countries which is most involved in really making sure that items are not shown. There has been in 2011, so a legal action taken by the League Against Racism and Anti-Semitism and the Union of Jewish Students of France, we have here some of them, against Yahoo France, in order to prevent the sale via yahoo.com of Nazi objects on the French territory. I want to say how difficult it is when we talk about international corporations such as Yahoo to prevent their online platform on the French territory to prevent these items from their public display. And this legal action has been going on for many years. Then I would like also to show you the situation in Austria. Public display and proliferation of Nazi objects is forbidden by Insignia Act, the so-called Abzeichengesetz from 1960. And it says that insignia, uniforms of parts of uniforms of an organization that is banned in Austria, and this is the case of the Nazi regime, so should be forbidden. Exceptions are made in the Insignia Act. Again, similarly to Germany and to France. Unless the ideas of a banned organization are endorsed or propagated,
the prohibitions do not apply to printed works, pictorial representations, performances of stage and film works, or to exhibitions that fall under the first section, but do not form an integral part of the exhibition. Or, even more importantly, the bans do not apply if the exhibition and its intended purpose are clearly directed against the ideas of the banned organization concerned. So, if I'm a movie maker and I want to make a movie about the Holocaust and show what has been there in place, I can use a flag with a Nazi item to show people, future generations, what has been there in the past, and of course teach about the memory that should not be forgotten. And in the Austrian, so national strategy against anti-Semitism, there is also a specific reference on the examination of possibility of confiscating National Socialist memorabilia. So it means that this problem has been tackled very, very seriously by Austria, even including it in the national plan. Also, Hungary, here we have the Hungary. So in the criminal code from 2013, a little bit more recent, we see that any person who distributes, uses before the public at large or public exhibits the swastika, the insignia of the SS, is guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by custodial arrest. So, unfortunately, when we go to the UK, we see that we don't have any legislation. However, there have been attempts to do something. The most important was the motion proposed in 2012 by MP Fabian Hamilton, so on the sale of Nazi memorabilia, so to, again, forbid the public display and dissemination. And there have been 3 petitions, as you can say, most recently last October and in 2020 and in 2019. Unfortunately, they either didn't reach quorum or were rejected. Unfortunately, the problem is, and the same happens in the United States, between what should be regulated by the legislation and what is free speech. So if I think that free speech allows me to go and speak publicly also about Nazi memorabilia, I would refrain from legislation. In Europe, especially in countries such as Germany, legislation is really, really important. And we want, as a European Jewish Association, these countries to be the leaders in putting more countries on providing legislation over the items. However, in the UK, we can see we have the public order from 1986 with 2 parts, fear or provocation of violence and use of words or behavior or display of written material. But there is nothing really addressing specifically Nazi memorabilia, just general subjects in order to prevent violence and offensive words. But we would like something which is stronger. Because our major fear is Nazi objects fall in the hands of people who glorified the Third Reich. And in this regard, out of very high level of sensitivity, several auction houses, including top auctioners such as Sotheby's, Christie's, Bonhams, eBay, and most of them are from the UK, which is very good because they don't have legislation, but they do them out of moral reasons and high sensitivity. They refuse to deal with Nazi memorabilia. Others, unfortunately, the German Munich-based Hermann Historica, the Druids Auctioneers in the UK, the Alexander Historical Auction in Maryland in the US are publicly displaying and selling Nazi items to the most generous bidder. And we have, first of all, I'll show you a good example. In 2019, the Swiss Lebanese investor Abdallah Shatila purchased a 600,000 euros valuable Nazi items. Among them, a collapsible top hat that allegedly belonged to Adolf Hitler. For 50,000 euros, which is really terrible considering that Adolf Hitler, so the worst person in the humankind, got his hat sold for so much money. And Shatila donated all the items to the Keren Ayesod, the Israeli fundraising foundation. So they are safe from dangerous hands, from nostalgics of the Nazi regime, which for us, it's really important. So I would like to show you a bunch of pictures about what all is being sold on auction houses. And you will be surprised because here, let's say we have maybe the most, you would say, representative items of the Nazi regime, a helmet, a flag, an insignia. But we have the Mein Kampf statue of the face of Hitler. Again, we have a flag. But here, it's my colleague Shlomo made some screenshots from the online auction made on the German Hermann Historica auction house. So you can start to see, for example, a small plate, pictures, a watch, as I told you, as I showed you before, another one, a carpet, you can see jars, and you can see even a dress which belonged to Eva Braun. Typewriters. You can see statues, mugs, small figures of Nazi SS, Nazi Germans. So all that is for us very relevant, and we do our best to contact as many countries as possible. Over the past months, EGA sent letters to ministers of justice of France, Germany, and Austria. I would like to say that we send it also to Madame Sophie Élyséon, déléguée interministérielle à la lutte contre le racisme, l'antisémitisme et la haine anti-LGBT. And we have here Elise Feigeles from the same office. And is it possible to show one example of the letter? Okay, so we accept the Nazi items can be sold in order to keep awareness high on the agenda and teach future generations about one of the darkest and bloodiest regimes in human history. However, we are asking to introduce or regulate the law by closing existing loopholes, as my colleague said, imposing a strict control on the identity of the purchasers, for example, on online auctions, because anyone can go and make a bid without being asked who he or she is, and representing clear proof about Nazi items being used in line with the exceptions provided by the law, so for education, for research purposes, the same ones we showed these items to you. So thank you very much, and have a very nice evening.
Okay, so first of all, you deserve a big applause for your attendance, outstanding attendance. Well done. It's the last conclusive panel. So really thank you. I'm calling to take your seats. First of all, Ruth Wasserman-Lande, Regina Slusny, Claudia Klimek, Sarah Singer, Rabbi Emil Ackerman, Lawrence Julius, Enrico Fink. Okay. Sorry. So I want to, first of all, thank you. Please, have a here. Lolo, here. Super. Thank you. Okay. So I think that we have the chance to have a fantastic conclusive panel to really reflect on the diversity of the European Jewish Association. We have here leaders, Jewish leaders from different backgrounds, from different countries, young leadership of Jewish communities, the old and very outstanding leadership of other Jewish communities, and especially to make some conclusive remarks. So I'm the director of the European March of the Living, and as you can understand, the March of the Living, it's to remember the past in order to build a better future. So therefore we are here to remember the past, but especially to build together a better future. So I will ask, first of all, to get some remarks from the Israeli perspective of Ruth Wasserman-Lande. She's a former diplomat and served as deputy ambassador in the Israeli embassy in Cairo. As far as I understand, you're also speaking Arabic. Thank you. Guilty. She worked as the advisor of President Peres, in charge also with the relationship with the Jewish communities and diaspora. And she spent also at the Knesset for 2 years in the centrist party of blue-white of former chief of staff Benny Gantz. She's a speaker, commentator, and also now appointed chair of the new World Impact Forum of the World Jewish Congress. So Ruth, the floor is yours. We have every one of you no more than 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. So, you know, I'm very, very touched. I'm very touched. I feel like my soul is in the right place. My neshama. Because the fact that so many Jewish representatives from so many Jewish communities are sitting here is not a given. It's not obvious. And I'm really touched. I'm very honored as well. And I want to thank you personally, my friend of many years, Michel. And I would like to say a big thank you for existing and for doing this conference to the EJA. Again, I think it was brilliant, full of knowledge, and very, very touching. So a very big thank you to you. I want to tell you a teeny little story, which will hopefully not take up all 5 minutes. You know, I grew up, as you can probably hear, in South Africa. And I made Aliyah when I was 17 on my own. And I did all sorts of things. But one of the lovely things that I did, there were two game-changing things that I did. One of them was spending 3 whole years in Cairo as a Jewish Israeli, not yet married at the time, woman, which is quite an issue in and within itself. But then I went off to the study at Harvard for a year, and it was on a leadership program and an MA. And in that leadership program, we met the beautiful Jewish community of Boston. And, you know, I was after 3 years of Cairo. So, and in Cairo, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, there is a rather cold peace. So when you spend time there as an Israeli Jewish woman, you sort of hear everything you can possibly imagine against Jews, against Israel, against, and then you come to Boston. And Boston, comparably, seems like heaven. Apart from the weather, of course. And then we met these amazing, well-to-do, well-placed, Jewish, intelligent, really astounding people in the Jewish communities learning about leadership. And they were telling us, the Israeli group that were on the scholarship, they were telling us that they were afraid of the Holocaust coming back. And I remember at the time, I was in my 30s, but very early 30s, that I was shocked. I was really shocked. I came from Cairo. And in Cairo, you know, it was obvious that it was very, very difficult for a Jew, for an Israeli, you know, there were a lot of misconceptions and a lot of antagonism, and it was inherent. And then I was thinking, how can you live in this heaven with everything that you have and think that you are afraid of the Holocaust coming back? And now, a few years later, it's so obvious to me. It came home. I mean, it totally is obvious. I mean, anti-Semitism is definitely on the rise. We are never vaccinated against it. It comes and it goes. And we can never truly, as some people said here, now it's okay here. Or now it's relatively okay there for somebody to walk with a kippah. But we don't know what will be tomorrow. And I totally understand, comprehend from within the feeling that I really didn't understand then as an Israeli, coming from Cairo, the sentiment of those Jewish people. So as an ex-South African and an Israeli, I'm sort of half diaspora Jew, half Israeli, and I feel that I'm in a position to really appreciate, to really feel the vast importance of this. This is so important. And all of you here don't have to be here. You're here because you have a drive, because you believe in it, because you are really moved to do something for your children and your grandchildren. And again, this is not something that is obvious. It's not something that somebody made you do. And this is the essence of the continuity. And I feel that in Israel, not everybody gets it. So one of the things that I feel in answer to your question, Michelle, is that we need to bring it home to the Israelis how important this is, how not obvious this is, how amazing it is to have rabbis. Nobody asks, what kind of a rabbi are you? There are religious people here and there are secular people here, and it's okay. We live in an era in Israel that every one of us is in a box. We are defined. And I, ladies and gentlemen, am sort of a very strange thing, because I'm a chulnikit from South Africa. I'm a complete Israeli, totally. I'm both religious and irreligious. I'm a Masorti. I respect the religion, but I'm not
in a box of keeping all the mitzvot. I cannot bring myself to hate one single Jew, which is the trend these days, unfortunately. And it's a very strange thing. So we should work on operatively maintaining the tie and bringing home the message to Israelis, because you know what? Don't forget that the Jews in Israel are part of the Am HaYehudi. They are part of us, we are part of them. I think Rabbi Margolin in the morning said, we are one. And we are. This is our strength. One of the bad things about being able to read Arabic is that you can read how happy our enemies are that there is infighting. Let's not give them et ha'oneg hazeh, that pleasure. Let's work together, which is something that you are doing as those representatives, all different kinds of representatives do every single day, but also with the Jews in Israel.
Thank you. Ruth,
One more point, please.
only 1 point? Short.
One, I promise, because I think it's vital. I think that one of the issues that screams out for Jewish communities throughout the world is sustainable sources of income. Let's create a group, a brainstorming group. This is an operative, concrete, doable thing with a variety of people from the Jewish world and from Israel, and think about creative ways of sustainable sources of income for Jewish education, for unity, and for Jewish leadership, and combating anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I ask all the panelists to really think about what they learned today, their insight, their advice, their best practices, their tips to all of you. So let's please focus on that when you are taking your floor. So Claudia Klimek, she's the vice president of Tesh Gazette, the Social Cultural Association of Jews in Poland. She's also the founder of Journalism Foundation in Krakow, and she's also working at the Presidium of the European Parliament in Brussels. Claudia, please.
Yes, I'm very task-oriented, so don't worry. So I would like to say, like, my thoughts after today's day. It's that what we heard today is actually overwhelming regarding the anti-Semitism and what is happening now in Europe. And Europe is radicalizing, and EPP, the European People's Party, one of the political fraction in the European Parliament in Europe that had the biggest power, is losing this power right now on leftist socialist group or on right-wing groups or conservatives. What EPP is trying to do now, it's like to flirt with the right wing or with the conservatives in order to keep the power in Europe. And this is what we are actually discussing now. And it's not a surprise that conservatives might regain the ground in 2024 European elections. So for sure, Europe is going to change. For sure, the politics in Europe will change. The narrative will influence people. So the relations between people, relations between non-Jews and Jews, also relations between Europe and Israel. So definitely we as Jews in general, we have to prepare for that. And it's actually, I think, up to us if we are going to see this as the opportunity or as a threat of what is coming next. Like in the TV show, you know, there's the Netflix, the House of Cards. I think that the cards are changing on the table and we have to find ourselves on this table once more time. And I think that we cannot lose the time. There's not a lot of time and we really have to think about the concrete actions that we would like to implement. So for sure, we're talking today about a lot of organizations, different kind of organizations that are doing a lot. But I have the impression that we are doing a lot, but we are not really communicated enough. So we should start to build a platform where we are exchanging the knowledge, exchanging the tools between ourselves, and we are starting to teaching each other. What's more, I think we should cooperate with the national parliaments much more. Again, in our also national parliaments, we have new members. We have to remember that we have to all the time build new relations based on trust. Even if this person, this member of the parliament, is from the party that we don't really appreciate, still, nevertheless, we have to talk with these people. We have to give them opportunity to learn more from us. But at the end, and just to finish, I would like to say that there was a question, what kind of advice I would give to my colleagues. So if I would speak to younger generation, young activist leaders, I would say, remember when you are working for the Jewish organizations, for the Jewish nation in general, remember to put your ego in a pocket. Because very often there is a tendency to put yourself in the middle, on the stage, just to shine. But very often, there's no need to take the whole burden on your own shoulders. Sometimes it's better to cooperate. Sometimes it's better to create a corridor for someone else, for some other organizations, which is more experienced in certain field, and give them a place, give them a stage to shine and to do the job as it should be done. And just as an example, in last 2 months, from last 2 months, we had an example that we created, thanks to European Jewish Association, we created as a social cultural association of Jews in Poland, a conference in the European Parliament about the anniversary of the Ghetto Warsaw Uprising, where we had a chance to speak on the European, in the European platform, a chance to speak about the Polish-Jewish history, Polish-Jewish relations. But right after that, we made an event in Warsaw, where we as a TSKZ gave the platform to the March of the Living, where they could talk by themselves for themselves because they are more experienced in certain fields.
Absolutely.
There's nothing bad in giving someone's, a spot, a light. So I'm thankful that I'm here. I'm thankful for the Rabbi Margolin that he created that kind of a space, because this space is not only for sitting, showing the presentations, but it's to build a network, to really get know each other, and to use the occasion to know what we really know and to exchange the platform.
Thank you, Claudia.
5 minutes?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fine, it's fine. So, thank you. As you can see, we have representatives of the main important Jewish communities in Europe. So we are moving now from Poland to the UK, and I would like to give the floor to Lawrence Julius, who is the vice chair of the National Jewish Assembly. He's also active in many organizations and associations where he can give expression to his passion for a fight against hate and radicalization, and also in the media and on social media. Lawrence.
Right, well, thank you. I'm not going to repeat what the previous two ladies said, because I agree with virtually everything they said. And I think it's important we listen to each other and we amplify the messages and we build our resources together. Because if someone is doing something great in one country, come together, don't reinvent the wheel, and we are much, much stronger that way. The big things, to me, the big worries, are we're losing the younger generation. I think that's a real challenge. I think the student initiative we heard today is great, but it's tiny. And we're also losing the universities. So many of the universities, the agenda is pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, and we've got to somehow get back into the universities. Media and social media distortions are a real horrendous problem. And what we heard, for example, from Tomer earlier today and from NGO Monitor, etc., this is really important, and from Camera. And we've really got to reinforce what they're doing, support them, and echo their messages. We need to share best practice, and we need to, if we see something wrong, we shouldn't wait for someone else to call it out. If we can't call out a problem ourselves, we shouldn't expect anyone else to do it. But always challenge in an appropriate way. And basically, that's my main takeaways.
Thank you, Lawrence. And now I'm giving the floor to the representative of the French Jewish community, to Rabbi Emil Ackerman, who was the first to establish a modern Orthodox community in Paris called Ayeka. He's very vocal on political issues. He's also a trainer for young people and political parties on the fight against anti-Semitism. Rabbi Emil, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I also agree completely with what the previous participants said. You know, we have a saying in French. We say, l'union fait la force, meaning we are stronger together. And something that I hear from younger Jewish participants from my community and other communities is sometimes a negative feedback, a reproach that we say to big Jewish institutions is that, they feel disconnected, that sometimes they feel that they're not heard, that they are not part of the conversation. And I feel that today, EJA had, people from all backgrounds, all age, and they all had their spot, their occasion to speak. And I feel that's a success that we should all celebrate today. Because even when sometimes the big Jewish institutions bring young people, they, tokens, they have to sit, in the back. But now, I think that's a success. But also that is the main, to me, that is the main challenge that we are going to face in the next generation, which is that there is a gap between some of the younger generations and the Jewish institutions. For example, I think about the relationship to Israel, because we have not known Israel in not a strong position. So even if we are Zionists and we want to support Israel, our view is sometimes going to be different from the bigger and older Jewish institutions. We have a different way of looking at our own identities, and there is a dialogue that needs to happen between all the generations. And also in terms of Jewish life, I feel that in Paris, in Europe, in a lot of other places that I've gone to, that a lot of things are happening outside of the establishment, outside of the institutions. And all of the young people that I've met, they try to get the support from the Jewish institutions. They try to get the support from the establishment, but the establishment should know that what the young people want to do, it's going to happen, whether they are for or against it. And I feel that, there should be a dialogue between the Jewish institutions and the younger generations to say, how can we compromise? How can we support you, even if we don't agree with everything that you do? And that's a story that I've heard many times. And I think that EJA today, EJA, is a success in terms of bringing this dialogue and making this happen. So thank you. My tip, my advice, or even my wish, if I could say, would be bring younger people to the table with all the people, with all the generations, make the dialogue happen and listen to each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Emil Ackerman. And now we are moving to another important Jewish community in Europe from Italy. Enrico Fink is the president of the Jewish community of Florence. He's the third largest Jewish community in Italy. He was born in a family very heavily impacted by the Shoah, by the Holocaust. He's a musician and an author. And please, he's also very active on the fight against anti-Semitism. So Enrico.
Thank you, Michel. What I learned today is that even though we are faced with incredible diversity and differences as Jewish communities in the different countries of Europe, we often, I heard today, this morning, often referring to similar processes that are needed to be enforced. I heard often speak about helping the institutions, the countries, to take responsibility, to confront their own past in order to create a credible strategy to combat present and future anti-Semitism. And this is what we try to do. I now raise my hand to the question with which Rabbi Margolin started this symposium. We try to do this. I try to do this in Florence, in Italy. We work with the institutions, the public institutions. And one of the main things that we do is we encourage them to take action in making Italians deal with their past, to take responsibility, understand not only their responsibility during the Shoah, during the war, but before that, and even the way that anti-Semitism has deep roots in Italian culture and Italian society. And many of the stereotypes that today we face were born in Italy in ancient times. Now, also one thing as good practices that I might quote is that we try to turn the narrative and to present these issues also in a positive form, positive way. I believe that the example that Lord John Mann posed was wonderful. Let's present Judaism, Jews, not only as victims, but as an integral, important, positive, active part of today's society. Something that today Europe needs alive Jews, living Judaism, and also Israel. We live, it has been said, in a culture that portrays Israel as evil and, let's say it, Zionism as the root of all evil in the world today. We must proudly present the core values of Israel and of Zionism to fight against that idea of Zionism as the root of all evil. Zionism is a fundamental, wonderful collection of ideals that animated Europe, as opposed to other forms of political ideas in Europe, colonialism and so on. This brings me to speak about the motion that we have read with interest that has been posed. What I really like about this motion is that it addresses one key element: why anti-Semitism is different from other forms of racism, why it is not the same. One thing that has not been said, I believe, today, is one thing on which scholars today agree. Anti-Semitism is also different because it is inherently part of European culture. European culture was born, grew out of many things, one of which was distancing themselves from Jews. Anti-Judaism, anti-Semitism are an integral, fundamental part of European and, by extension, Western culture. Because of that, European culture cannot exempt itself from fighting anti-Semitism. And this is the only critique that I can pose to that motion, is this: that it is not only on the defensive. We must not only distance ourselves, not only say we want to be discussed separately. We must say, before everything else, Europe must address anti-Semitism. We must tell to the activists, we must not leave the civil rights that have been invaded by anti-Semitism. We must not leave those fields to them. We must say, in order to fight for civil rights, in order to fight discriminations, in order to fight all forms of discriminations, you must, first of all, take responsibility, confront your own culture, your own past, understand that anti-Semitism is at the basis of most forms of racism. Deal with that. This can be a weapon against all forms of racism, not only to separate ourselves, but to be a part of this society.
You are very passionate. Thank you. Thank you. And now we are moving to Germany. It's not like the EGA contest, like Eurovision, but we are really giving the floor to the most important Jewish communities of Europe. So now, Sarah Singer, she's the Vice President of ZWST, is the Central Jewish Welfare Organization of Germany. Sarah, please.
Well, after this Italian signore, it's very hard to speak. I'm not so temperament, I am, but not that one. So I want to address, first of all, thank you for having me here. And I think the young people, what I heard today, they're on really extremely good way. We have in Germany, take every time young Jewish people to concentrate on their being Jewish, not to be afraid to enforce them. And we invite them, we made a lot of projects for them, and they do digitalization 4.0. We get them in every single piece what we do, so the establishment is really aware of that, and we open up because, I mean, one day we are gone and they have to take over. So better is that we play our cards right away. Thing is, what we did, we made in Germany, because we are very close, we have a unique thing. In Germany, the Jewry is very well accepted, even though that we have a rising anti-Semitism. We know that. Because we are in the middle of Europe, we have half of us is east and the other half is west. And we are right in the middle, and we do understand what's coming up. It's not easy. And the task is that we open up a center of anti-Semitism competence center, and we got every time the money from the German government, because I thought it's even better to get the money from the Germans and then to put out what we want, that they can see it. And why should we take the money from our people? I don't get it. I mean, this is not right. So they pay for it, and we're going into police academies, in the military school, in schools, so we really get implemented in the German government and in the German resources. To talk to people, to be aware, and to tell them and to show them what is a Jew and how we act and how proud we are in the middle of Germany. I mean, this is a different story. And sometimes if I come around the corner, they say, oh my God, she again. Because I'm asking every time for the money for our projects. This is how it is. In the year 2018, one time I was in the European Commission and I was wondering why is anti-Semitism in one word with racism and Islamophobia. Some kind somewhere. I said, how does that work? I said, I don't like this. So we were working for 2.5 years pursuing the EU Commission. Really, they don't like me. To the day of 2020, then I knew that there's going to be the German chair. And then I go up to the ambassador and to everybody what I could think of. And Mrs. von Schnurbein can tell you the whole story about it, because the two of us, we pushed it through with the ambassador and the German government. And then that anti-Semitism had its own standing. And this is so important because then afterwards, they filled it up with money just that we can, everybody in Europe, participate and work on it. So please take the chances. As more as you get these fundings, as more they have to put in some more money just to achieve the projects. So please be aware. I know what for a hack it is to put all the paperwork together. I know that. But there are a lot of good people, they know how to do it. So it's very important. Second, third of all, then we did the Jewish-German volunteer exchange. Very important. We take German children, after students, for half a year or for 1 year, they go Germans, Christians, they go to Israel and they work in hospitals or in social work things. Vice versa, Israelis are coming to Germany and working in Germany. So both sides are really exchanging, first of all, language. This is important. Through language, you get in touch with the people. And we have this already since 10 years, and I'm very proud of it, because every year we get like 30 Israelis to Germany and 30 Germans to Israel. So, and these are our mouthpiece. This is our task, how we work on it. So they come home and they tell how it was in Israel, how they liked it or they didn't like it, whatever, but they have an objective feeling what is about Israel, and the Israelis have an objective feeling what is about Germany, and they can implement this. And I think we have to work very close so we can do it. I don't know, in your countries it's much more fair with the government. This is very important. You have to nag them, you have to go them on your nerves, you have to call them, you have to sit down with them, you have to move them, because if you don't move them, they don't move. Believe
Absolutely.
me, not one bit. And you have to move them and give them solutions. Don't ask them, just give it to them. Tell them what to do, and they will do because they're happy to get something. Don't ask them, forget that. They don't have the answers, forget that one. And to make parliamentary evenings, what we do, once in a year we invite, because as a central welfare organization, you're in a very nice position, being social and being nice, and you could be very bad too at the same time. And we work together with we are in the group of 6, Verbände, how you call this in English? Associations. It's like the Caritas, the Catholics, the Protestants, then with the Red Cross, and all these nice, beautiful German welfare organizations that they think they are so good and so effective.
Okay.
And this is how we work with this, because we know exactly, because we go with them to all these German governmental sittings, meetings, this and that. And already the Muslims association, we say, no, they are not ready yet. They have to accept us before they can go somewhere.
Strong words. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think
thank you.
This is some task maybe for the future.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe, and I thank you
for
so much.
Insights and your tips. And now, thank you. And now our last speaker, maybe one of the most experienced Jewish leaders, Regina Slusny. She's the president of the Forum of the Jewish Organization of Antwerp and Vlaanderen. She is also the vice chair of the Hidden Children during the Holocaust. She's by herself a Holocaust survivor and one of our leading leaders. Regina.
Thank you. And thank you, Rav Margolin, for inviting me again. Well, Belgium, we have anti-Semitism, but on the other side, we have a lot of contact, especially in Antwerp, with the non-Jewish people. Christians, Sinti, even the Muslim people. I was invited twice at iftar evenings. We can speak with them, but on the higher level, they promise a lot, and they don't do it. And that's the big problem. I try to speak to the youngsters more. I go to the schools from 9 years old till university, and the youngsters, they don't know even what is a Jew. They look at me and they say, "You're not Jewish." Because what they know in Belgium is the Orthodox Jewish people they see in the streets in Antwerp, all dressed in black and the peyote floating around. That's for them the Jew. I'm not a Jew. So I explained to him, well, if I'm not a Jew, why is all my family gone? I was lucky. But a lot, the 6 million, were gone. And I explained to them that we are all the same, and I give them a message. I tell them we are all equal, we are all similar one to another. Please be open to getting to know each other and accept each other. We do not choose many things in life, but we have a choice in how we behave to each other. It's because of the stereotypes that we lost these 6 million. The world said never again when they opened the camps, but that same day they were killing other people, maybe not Jews, but they were still killing. And why is the killing going on? Not only anti-Semitism, which leads to killing, but the killing is going on all the time. So I don't understand that. If we want this to stop, it is up to the young people to take a different path and make the right choice in life so that the world becomes a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your attendance. And now I'm giving the floor to the Managing Director of EGA. Thank you, dear panelists, for your words and for your insights.
What an amazing panel, really. In the beginning, when Michel told me that he's going to invite all the speakers, I said it's not going to work, but your presence here proved that it can work. So we are almost over. I need your final 5 minutes of attention. And we have decided to keep the resolution, the vote for the resolution for the gala dinner so that we dismiss you earlier. Because we appreciate you still being here after all these hours. But before leaving, I would like to give the floor for 2 minutes for two of my most appreciated people in this room, if you allow me, Ellen van Praag and Anja Hanema, who were behind the inaugural edition of the EGA Labs. They have their 2 minutes to give us an overview for those who didn't participate and the steps forward, proposals. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes, you can use it.
Okay. Dear everybody, Rabbi Margolin, dear team of EGA, first of all, we'd like to thank you for giving Anja and myself the opportunity to experience something completely new, being the EGA labs. I have only 2 minutes, so I'm going to cut it short. I only give you a few of the outcome answers to the question we asked. We asked everybody available at the table, which were about 17 people, their personal feelings about anti-Semitism, about the way they encounter anti-Semitism. And so I'm going to cut it short and give you the few. Foremost is that Israel is the general incinerator of attacks. Classic anti-Semitism about money, being rich, superior, etc. When there is a significant amount of Arab emigres, hatred is proving a genuine threat. For instance, this influx in Sweden has led to a lost country where no Jew, synagogue, cemetery, etc. is safe. Is this our future? A country lost, unable to restore itself. Another bullet point is, as I already said, referring to Israel being the incinerator of attacks. Knowledge. Explain. But first, investigate the knowledge in order to explain. Know your facts and figures. There's a choice. You can forfeit this dilemma or you choose to react. In general, if we want to connect or explain the politics of Israel, we stand empty-handed because we have no influence on the policy of Israel. We, as non-residents, cannot vote, unlike, for instance, the Turkish people all over Europe, who have a great influence on the Turkish politics. We have to accept the choices the Israeli people make and deal with it. However, whenever you choose to make a statement about the Israeli politics, then we need a tight information connection with, for instance, the Ministry of Diaspora, in giving us the tools to address this topic. These are just a few of the remarks that were made at the session. It was a short session, and it was apparent it was too short, but hopefully we'll go on.
Yes.
And I'll give Anja the floor.
Yes. Finally, before you go into the garden, have a nice drink, I hope. The EGA lab, which we did during lunchtime, was a success. All people actually said it was superb to have the possibility to say something personal about the attacks and the possibility of defense. So a follow-up is interesting to do next year. Such a lab should be a little bit longer, not 1 hour, but 1.5 hours or something. And we also advise a pilot with a goal such as building a structure which enables us to act and to react on anti-Semitism. That was it. Okay. 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, ladies. That was really short, and I appreciate it. It is over. So, a cordial thank you to all of you, really, from the bottom of my heart. This applause is for you. An equally cordial thank you to our interpreters, who did an excellent job a little bit longer. Thank you very much. Practical information. Please collect all your belongings, because the room is going to be transformed into the place where we are going to have our gala dinner a little bit after 8. In the meantime, for those of you who have a little bit of energy or who would like to regain your energy, we would cordially like to invite you to join us on the 3rd floor of the main building of the hotel. You take the central elevator to the 3rd floor. There is the rooftop there, and there's a happy hour, relaxed snacking.